5 Live Formula One.
Another Max Verstappen masterclass underneath the floodlights of the Jeddah Corniche circuit in Saudi Arabia. That's 2 from 2 for the Dutchman as he led home a Red Bull 1-2 and continues to do his talking on track despite the continuing controversy surrounding the team. But the headlines will be taken by 18-year-old Brit Oliver Bearman, who on his Ferrari debut filling in for Carlos Sainz managed to claim P7. I'm Jenny Gow. Alongside me is Harry Benjamin, lead commentator. It was great to watch Oliver Bearman, and actually he brought all of the drama and excitement, I think.
Well, I'd give some plaudits to Kevin Magnussen as well for that one, but I'm sure we'll come on to that. But yeah, it was absolutely fantastic from Bearman, thrown in at the deep end and did a solid job. And I think he has made the case for a 2025 Formula One seat as far as I'm concerned.
Former F1 driver Jack Aitken is here as well. He did all right, didn't he?
I think he did very all right. Yeah, absolutely. He wanted more, I think, judging from the messages at the end that we heard from his radio, but I think he can really be proud of what he's done. And I would agree with Harry. He's really put a good case forward for his future in F1.
F1 strategist Ruth Buscombe also joined us for the race and now joins us in the podcast. Ruth, it's lovely to have you along. We'll hear a lot more chat about strategy, but what were your thoughts about the race overall?
Well, we had a lot less interruptions than possible. We've seen in previous years in Jeddah, really dominated by that safety car, and then no further interruptions. That meant that it really did come into who pitted on that first pit stop and who stayed out.
Yeah, safety car. Just talk us through what happened. Lance Stroll caused that crash, didn't he, Harry?
Yeah, he did. Lance Stroll clipped the wall, the inside of, I want to say turn 4, was it? No.
Turn 23.
The 23. I always get
they all
those
look
two confused. There's 27 million corners around this track. Turn 23, clipped that inside wall, front left tyre then and suspension completely gone, and he went straight on into the runoff and into the Tech Pro barrier, wedged that Aston Martin in there. Quite a funny radio message from his engineer asking if he could bring the car back, to which Stroll pretty bluntly said no. And Stroll out of the car, he was okay, but that did back up the 100% probability of a safety car around this Saudi Arabian circuit, and that led to a flurry of pit stops. But crucially, some did not pit, including the McLaren of Lando Norris, the Mercedes of Lewis Hamilton, and the Haas of Nico Hülkenberg, who all stayed out.
Yeah, Ruth, it was quite nice. Norris was leading the way at one point, and we thought, this is just a bit of a difference, I suppose. You knew Verstappen was going to hunt him down. He's such a great driver, but Norris out in front in that McLaren.
Well, I mean, it must have been nice whilst it lasted. Obviously, you still have to do your pit stop. So when you're on a pit wall, you're really looking at where you are virtually. So you're looking at, if I take my pit stop now, where would I come out? So the way we would see it is he wasn't really leading, unfortunately. Unless there was a red flag, then of course he would have been leading the race legitimately.
Yeah, and Max Verstappen, just a word for him and what he's managed to achieve out there. He makes it look so easy.
100th career podium for Max Verstappen, and he's going to break his own records this year by the sounds of things when it comes to consecutive race wins. Put it on pole. Even though in qualifying and throughout practice, that 1 lap pace of the Red Bull, he wasn't always at the top of the timings, but delivered a pole lap, and then the only fight he really had was off the line, covered Leclerc down to the inside, but then saw that off and pulled away and never really looked back. He had called the safety car perfectly in the pit stop, had navigated the traffic well enough, and took his second win of the season, 2 from 2, as you said at the start.
Let's hear it from our winner. It is Max Verstappen.
Yeah, the car was working really well. Of course, that last stint was a bit longer than we initially would have liked, but with the safety car, you had to pit. And from there onwards, it was just about managing the tyres to the end to make sure that the tyres would last. But I do have to say that the last 2 laps, when I was catching the back markers, my tyres were starting to be a bit cold and it was quite tricky. Like with the grip, it was very easy to have big moments. So I had to take my time to get through the back markers. And once I cleared them again, I could just settle in. And, around here with all the walls being so close, it's easy to make a mistake. And, of course, I wanted to prevent that.
We obviously saw a lot from you in the RB19 last year. The RB20, a very different car. What can we expect from you going forward? What's the full potential of this package?
Well, we don't know the full potential yet. We had a great start to the year, and now it's also about just keeping the momentum going, keep putting upgrades to the car, and keep working.
So Max Verstappen winning for Red Bull. And Jack, I thought this was a nice stat. I shouldn't be the one doing stats, Ruth should be. But so that's Red Bull's 115th win, and they jump ahead of Williams, and they're only behind McLaren and Ferrari for all-time wins. Painful for Williams, but amazing for Red Bull. In such a short history, they only joined the sport 2005?
Yeah, it's a very historic list of names that you're competing with there. As you say, a very young team. So what they've achieved in that time is extremely impressive. They continue to be the dominant force at the moment, and it's really up to everyone else to try and catch up. Nothing that is new for us, unfortunately.
Yeah, can you see them ending this winning streak, Ruth, anytime soon?
Well, at the moment, you would say no. In fact, actually, they've increased their lead in terms of percentage. If you look at really dive down into the numbers over the first two races, the best option is going to be 2026 when we have these new regulations. But you never know. If you look at what the changes were made back in the Mercedes dominance era between 2020 and 2021, we saw that shift across the season too.
Ruth, can I ask you a question? Does it demoralise the other teams in terms of what they can achieve when they see Verstappen and Red Bull creating a further gap at the head of the field?
Well, I can't speak for anybody else and how they feel. I think in terms of in any sport, you have to play the game that you're given, and actually you have to adjust your targets, your definition of success, and just like a driver or a strategist. Today the challenge for Charles Leclerc was to try to keep that P2 from Checo, which he wasn't able to do. The challenge for Oliver Behrman was to come home with points. So I think it's not just about the win, and it's about performing to your best level.
What about as a driver, Jack? Demoralised?
No, I mean, I'd echo what Ruth says. It's about playing with the game that you've been given, and ultimately, of course, we all want to be on the top step. That's what we're really driven by, and everyone dreams of that scenario. But if it's not within reach, then you just have to do the best that you can and be happy with that. And I think there's a lot of maturity that can come from being forced to fight for something less than first place and accepting that as well. So the teams and drivers behind Red Bull and Max at the moment, they've got a lot of hard weekends ahead of them. But I'm sure they're up to that task, and they'll be pushing as hard as anyone.
I think that brings us nicely on to Sergio Perez. The gap on the road, I think, was about 8.6 seconds. He got a 5-second penalty added to his time, so it doesn't portray his time as well. Was that enough for him, do you think, Jack?
It was better than what we've seen, I think, in previous races. I'm kind of extending into the back of last season as well. But yeah, it wasn't that bad today. I think that's what I would go with. It's still not obviously on the level of Max, but I don't think anyone realistically expects him to be there, do they, Harry?
Well, the expectation is for him to be second and to be utilised strategically if and when needed, right, by Red Bull. If Verstappen, for whatever reason, comes into trouble during a race and is prevented either from taking the win, they need Perez there and capable to take the win, or they need to use, much like what we saw from the race of the two Hasses, teamwork to sacrifice one for the other. Today, as Jack said, better from Perez, still needs more, in my opinion.
He overtook Charles Leclerc on the racetrack. There wasn't any strategy involved with that. It was just a simple overtake. I think he got that job done as quickly as he could. What did you think, Ruth?
Yeah, and I think if you looked at the timing of when it came just after he got that 5-second penalty. So a team will take that into consideration. Maybe they were playing the long game, looking after the tyres before, but the second that 5-second penalty comes through, it changes the game, because if there's another safety car or there's another incident, he is now at risk of losing that position. So it really was probably a case of, you've got a 5-second penalty, now the tide has turned. It's more important to get past them on track and then push on, rather than like nurse and look after these tyres, which everybody had a very long stint on those hard tyres to get to the end.
Yeah, let's hear it from Sergio Perez, second place finisher.
Yeah, it was a strong result for the team. The whole team has done an amazing job. The stops were amazing. It was a bit of a shame, that we got compromised with that early safety car and with the penalty. But it was overall a good, solid race for the whole team.
Are you confident that you can take the fight to Max going forward, close the gap a little bit? I mean, what do the next couple of weeks look like for you?
I think we've done a step forwards. We've taken
we've taken good steps forward, so we should be looking strong in the coming weekends.
So that's the Red Bulls 1-2. Will, I think, tell that story a lot of times this year. But in third place, it was Charles Leclerc finally getting on the podium. I say finally after 2 races. I think that's a bit rich, but it's the word that came out. How did you read Leclerc's race, Jack?
Yeah, I think he did a good job of maximising what he could. I was really impressed that he managed to get that fastest lap at the end, actually, because I wasn't expecting that kind of pace right at the end of the race on quite a worn set of tyres, but he managed to do it. And he stayed roughly within touching distance of the Red Bulls. I mean, touching distance is maybe being a bit generous, but he was up there and he kept well clear of the battle for best of the rest behind him. So I think that's not a bad day out for Leclerc.
No, and I think this is encouraging as well for Ferrari, actually. Sainz was on the podium in Bahrain and Leclerc on the podium here in Saudi. So they are kind of cementing themselves as the next team behind Red Bull. It's tight, though, in that mid-pack, and it is going to come down to track specifics as well. But compared to how Ferrari have been historically over the last couple of seasons, I think this feels like they're in a really good place and they're moving towards being a real challenge for 2026, perhaps. With Lewis Hamilton coming on board next year too. I think this is overall good signs for Ferrari this season too.
Let's hear from Charles Leclerc.
I don't think there was anything to do better today. On the medium, we struggled a bit more than we expected. On the beginning of the hard, we struggled a bit more than we expected. Towards the end, we were fast because we obviously did the fastest lap in the last lap, which was nice. We got helped a little bit with the DRS, but all in all, I felt good with the car. There are just a few things that we need to look. Had some weird vibrations, but apart from that, all good.
We just saw you give Ollie a high five for his efforts tonight. I mean, what do you make of that performance?
Unbelievable. I mean, he's done an exceptional job to get into a Formula 1 car in FP3 when all the drivers have done FP1, FP2. You don't know the car. The track is one of the most challenging one of the season, and you get there and you do the first 3 laps in FP3 and you are straight away on the pace and pushing the car to its limits. So it's been super impressive to see him so fast straight away. Super nice to see him so happy all weekend and so excited as he was, and he's done an amazing job.
So that was Charles Leclerc finishing in third place. He mentioned Oliver Bellman. We'll hear from him and talk plenty about him too after the break. You're back. It's me, Jenny Gow, with Harry Benjamin, Jack Aitken and Ruth Buscombe for the podcast. Plenty to talk about still, including young Oliver Bearman, 18-year-old debutant for Ferrari. It came as a surprise to him yesterday when he had to cover for Carlos Sainz with his appendicitis and his subsequent operation. Harry Benjamin, boy, did good.
Yeah, I've never said the word appendicitis so much on a weekend either, but at one point I forgot it as well.
Obviously you weren't here for Alex Albon and his appendicitis.
No, I wasn't. But
missed out.
I missed out on that one. But yes, fantastic work. He came into this weekend set for Formula 2. He was gearing up for the reverse grid race where he would start 10th, having set pole position in the Formula 2 race around this Jeddah track for the second of the 2 F2 races that occur in that format, and then catapulted into FP3 and looked very impressive. And many of the drivers remarking about how well he quickly adapted to the car. Suddenly he's going around 14 seconds faster a lap, and around a street circuit, that is significant enough. Fantastic work. He's a young, talented prodigy anyway, coming up through the ranks. He's been supported by the Ferrari Driver Academy since 2021, and I think he performed well today. Didn't put it in the wall, didn't get too disgruntled on the radio when it came to strategy, was actually quite informed, and I thought very insightful and sort of forward thinking, asking his engineers, okay, what's the gap behind me to Norris and Hamilton who were scrapping? Can I stay in front of them? Can I catch them? And he becomes the first British driver to score points on debut since Paul di Resta. How'd you like them?
I do like them a lot. So he finished P7, which, let me look at the points. I always forget which they are down there. Is it 8? No, it must be less than that.
What, for Bearman?
Yeah.
Bearman would have picked
6.
up 6 points.
Got there in the end. 6 points for Bearman. Jack, you've done exactly what he's done. You have to jump into a car and fill in for the driver. What was he trying to prove, and how well did he do that in your point of view?
I think, especially after qualifying yesterday, where I sense he was a little bit frustrated with not being able to get through to Q3 with a couple of mistakes on what should have been his best lap. He wanted to come in and have a really nice, clean race and just move forwards. That was the big aim for him. He'd said beforehand that he just wanted to be in the points. I think realistically, internally, he was probably hoping for a bit more than that, and that's what he managed to achieve. He had a really good race, showed strong pace at the end, confident moves to get through the midfield, and like Harry said, he kept it out of the wall, which not everyone did today. So it was a really, really, really solid performance. It wasn't stratospheric. I'm being the critiquer because F1
Someone
as a
has
sport.
to.
Well, F1 as a sport it's incredibly harsh, isn't it? That's the thing. We spoke a little bit about this yesterday, that ultimately there's always going to be a little bit of pressure on, because F1 and especially the top teams like Ferrari, they're looking for the next great thing. They're not looking for a solid driver. They're not looking for a good driver. They're looking for greatness, looking for something special. And he came close to doing that today, I think, but it was a really solid performance rather than something truly super special. I'm being really harsh here. He did a fantastic job, but I'm just putting it out there that
chucked in.
It is a harsh sport.
Only one practice session, and
Absolutely.
FP3 is during the daytime as well.
I'm going to get ripped
so
apart
he's
now.
unprecedented. Actually, while we're here, should we go through your Sakia Grand Prix weekend as well?
All right.
Don't go there. That's mean.
Absolutely.
No.
Right.
I do not need to be reminded of that.
No, but you make a valid point, and I have seen that point made as well. This was Behrman's chance. Behrman had the opportunity to not break his career this weekend, but make it, and I think he did enough to make it. There's no Ferrari seat up for grabs, that's for sure, next season. But there are seats down the grid who could be looking for an Oliver Behrman in their seat, particularly a Haas team with a Ferrari power unit in the back of it.
I mean, it would line up quite nicely. There have been some rumours about Magnussen and the security of his seat underperforming a little bit compared to Hülkenberg. Would they want some fresh blood? I would say that would be a great thing for that team.
Well, Oliver won driver of the day, and he certainly was my driver of the day, and certainly driver of the weekend. I mean, if you looked at what he achieved in qualifying yesterday after just one heavily interrupted FP3 session, 400ths off of knocking out 7-time world champion Lewis Hamilton in your first time ever in a Formula One qualifying session, especially on a track like Jeddah, set down a marker. And today, he didn't put a foot wrong. If you look at the positions that he gained, the majority of them were by not making mistakes, by following instructions. He started on that soft tyre, which the day actually kind of came towards him, even though he was a little bit annoyed on the cool-down lap. I'm sure his strategist will explain to him that actually that was lovely, because you got all the advantages of that soft tyre before it started to go away on that safety car where everybody piled into the track. And actually, at that point, the soft was still better than the medium. But didn't make any mistakes in the pit stops. Hitting that pit stop position in that busy pit lane must have been difficult, must have been quite overwhelming. Didn't make any mistakes there. Didn't crash like Stroll. So gained that position. And if you look at the way that he, as Jack mentioned, kind of methodically defended, didn't make any mistakes, even with Lewis Hamilton and Lando Norris on a soft shod tyre right behind you with 4 seconds to go. As we were saying, looking at the gaps, initially they were taking 6 tenths out, then it was 2 tenths, and actually Behrman was faster in sector 3 and really not making any mistakes, which is the most amount of pressure, as Jack will know, in those closing stages.
Take that, Aitken. Don't be so negative about Behrman.
I was just playing devil's advocate, all right? Someone had to say it.
Should we listen to him, hear him? Yes, I think we will. This is Oliver Behrman.
Physically, it was a really difficult race, especially at the end when I had the two guys on soft behind me. I had to basically push flat out, and it was mentally difficult race as expected, and physically I was struggling too. But great fun out there.
Just generally this weekend, how proud are you of your performance, what you've displayed, and how valuable is this, for your career going forward?
Yeah, I think I put a good showing for myself, which is the main thing, right? It's difficult circumstances, not a lot of laps on track, but I think we maximized everything today. I felt like I was a bit quicker than Alonso and Russell in front, but not enough to catch. The gap was pretty big. I lost a lot of time trying to overtake Hülkenberg, who used his experience to keep me back for a few more laps than he should have. So that's my bad, but no, it was a good race.
You mentioned that you feel destroyed. I mean, how's the neck, and are you expecting a bit of a sore one when you wake up tomorrow?
I think especially my lower back and my neck is hurting. These seats take a bit of fine tuning, and this was the first race. We didn't really have time to focus on that. So not the most comfortable, but I'm happy that we finished quickly. It was a good motivation to finish the race quicker.
And just finally, should the opportunity arise, you feel ready to jump back in and do the job again?
You tell me. Did I do enough?
Impressive. Well done, Ollie.
Thanks.
So it was lovely, him finishing the race, got a hug from Lewis Hamilton, which, Jack, you seem quite jealous about.
I mean, who doesn't want a hug from Lewis Hamilton? He looks like he gives great hugs.
Have you ever had a hug from him?
No.
Oh.
Do you think I got a hug? I was at he wasn't even on the grid when I was there. So
did anyone give you a hug? Or no?
No, I got a fist bump from Seb though.
Oh,
that comes pretty close,
I would
right?
take that. Yeah.
I've had a hug from both of them, Jack.
Take that, Oliver.
Ruth just comes in and drops the mic.
All right, I'll just leave.
Ruth, that's why we got you here, not for your strategic powers, but for your huggability. We'll all have a hug later, don't worry. Safely. Let's talk about Behrman. What's his future like? Jack, how does it work now? He's part of the young driver team, isn't he, with Ferrari?
Yeah, the FDA. I think it depends a little bit on the specific academy that you're a part of, but having been a part of a couple, first with Renault and then with Williams, there are sometimes opportunities to not get out of the contract is perhaps not the right language, but there are doors left open to maybe go to other teams. You know, we've spoken about Haas being a possible destination for him, and I think it would make a lot of sense with the Ferrari backing and Haas having done that in the past with some academy drivers. But, you know, there are chances that other teams are going to see that performance from him this weekend and start sniffing around. And if there are any holes in that contract, you know, maybe.
Yeah, it would be such a shame if he doesn't get a seat next year. I really want to see some more young blood in Formula One. And the only seat, realistically, I think we can see Behrman in next year would be one of the Haas's, most likely Kevin Magnussen's. If he continues, Magnussen has been a little bit on the underperforming side compared to his teammate Hülkenberg. Where else does he go, though? I don't think he'd be able to make the jump to another team. Mercedes locked off. They've got their own young driver academy they'd want to promote up. Look at Antonelli, the wonder kid in F2. Jack, you do
never discount Red Bull.
You think Red Bull would take it? Do you think Ferrari would let that happen?
I mean, they wouldn't let it happen, but like we've said, you know, contracts aren't always watertight, or they can be broken, and Red Bull have gone after other juniors in the past.
Well, I'm not a contracts girl, I'm a numbers girl. And if you look at how Haas have already been analysing Behrman, the Mexico FP1 session last year is a really good example. So immediately he was in the car, and when he was in the car for Magnussen, who statistically is the slower of the two drivers, especially over one-time lap, he was only 0.2 off of Hülkenberg. And that was with not really maximising that lap on that soft tyre in Mexico, as we well know is a one-time lap tyre. So I think they've already set down a marker, and then today we've really seen that he's able to do that kind of magic extra step that you never really can get from the numbers, which is, can your driver, with all their junior records, perform when the chips are down and when it's actually a race scenario, and can they make those kind of decisions live, which I think we all saw who's very good at today. It's
worth also thinking, and this might not be as a directed impact, but there's rumours at the moment going around that Jerome D'Ambrosio, who is part of Mercedes and has come in to kind of fill the James Vowles role of looking after the Mercedes junior program and also being seen as a potential successor for Toto Wolff. There's a lot of rumours coming into today, a race day, that he might go to Ferrari next season with Vasseur and Ferrari trying to poach more people from Mercedes. And this is quite a high-ranking. D'Ambrosio comes in. It's quite a big snatch for Ferrari now. And if he comes in, does this strengthen their driver academy program? Do they nick him there? Because Jock Clear, who currently heads that up, has got quite a lot of it on his plate. So I don't think he can handle it all. So are Ferrari, I think, strengthening their driver academy to basically keep hold of Behrman no matter what, and anybody else it might be. So if he doesn't get a seat with a Ferrari-powered team next season, he'll stay in that academy and they'll put him on the reserve seat. Maybe Hypercar in the World Endurance Championship is another plausible option now for those Ferrari juniors. So worth bearing in mind, I think, just in the background of everyone's thoughts. Just about Jerome D'Ambrosio, he's been such a Wolff prodigy, they're bringing him up through the ranks, first with Susie Wolff, now with Toto Wolff. He's been their understudy. He's taken over team management roles at Formula E, now in Formula One. I can't see him walking away from that connection because it's a pretty powerful door to slam shut. Yeah, but I agree, but there's no smoke without fire, and Fred Vasseur can be very persuasive, I think, and also just completely sidetrack and irrelevant. But we were talking earlier in the weekend, of course, with Behrman coming in about stand-in drivers. Completely forgot Jerome D'Ambrosio on the list when he came in to replace Grosjean in Monza.
Just to clarify, you asked for the greatest.
I did ask for the
sub.
greatest, and we then very quickly realised that it's more fun just looking at all the standards.
I agree. Carlos Sainz, we've just seen images of him going into the Ferrari garage. He obviously had his surgery, recovering well. Do you, Jack, think he could be back for Australia, or do you think he's in danger of missing that race as well?
Oh, I'm no medical expert. I'm trying to remember.
Oh, you're not?
I mean, I might claim otherwise occasionally. No. I'm trying to remember how long Albon was out for. But, I mean, yeah, he looked like he was in good form when he was in the Ferrari garage.
Yeah, I heard it was a very smooth operation.
Oh, love that. So Behrman will have one eye on that race. He'll go there presumably as reserve driver. Now, there was a rotating driver list for Ferrari, but now he's actually driven the car. I would expect him to be boosted up that, or not, Ruth?
Well, a lot of that comes down to logistics. So actually, junior drivers, you often have quite a few because they may have their own programs. And so, the reason why he was there is because he was physically on site for the F2 weekend. And let's not forget that he's still got a job to do there. And wouldn't it be a great story if even after having to withdraw by regulation out of this race weekend in the F2, when he was due to start on pole, so he's missed out the opportunity to score points in this round, he comes back and even with that deficit is able to win the F2 championship. Now that would be a statement of intent.
That would be a massive story, and this has put him massively on the back foot now. 0 points from the F2 in Bahrain. Both he drives for the Prema team. They're both cars.
I know. They're the ones that are judging him anyway.
I know.
They know.
He said, and you said it on the pod as well, I think, that ultimately you're in F2 to get the opportunity in F1, and he's got that. It is. He will be in Australia. F2 are racing there, so he will be on hand.
All the other F2 drivers were in the catering unit watching that TV.
Fuming.
I just wish. It's dream position, so it's no hardship for him.
One man who won't be fuming after that is John Alkin. He's the executive chairman for Ferrari. He was in the garage. He has a load of drivers now. The future for Ferrari, let's not go into this year because we're looking at probably 2026. But 2025, they've got Hamilton joining them. They've got this performance from Behrman. They've got Leclerc tied down on a long-term contract. John is going to be a happy man today, isn't he? Maybe the happiest man. Yeah,
the tide is turning for Ferrari. I'm going to put my neck out on that one.
Optimistically hopeful?
I think so. I think Fred Vasseur, Charles Leclerc said a few weeks ago in an interview that he was surprised at how quickly Vasseur was getting up to speed with the way Ferrari works. And we all know Ferrari has a certain way of doing things, and any change in that is either met with displeasement, which is not a word.
Displeasure?
Displeasure, that's the one.
This is me telling you how to speak.
Thank you very much. I've just done 50 laps. I've got nothing left. Displeasure at that. But equally, I think they have this amazing young pool of drivers now, but there will come a point where they struggle to put them into places, is my worry, because they've got Behrman, who's the highest in F2 for them. They've got a guy called Dino Vaganovic in F3, but then they've also still on their list, although let's be honest, the F1 opportunities have gone for them. You look at your Giovinazzis and your Robert Schwartzmans, they're looking like they're going down the sports car route, but Ferrari now have this massive opportunity in hypercar, which could be a lure to keep drivers within that talent pool. But the F1 opportunity, I actually think is rather small.
Jackson's nodding. I thought you were going to come in
Jack was gearing up to disagree with me massively, and then I brought it back somehow.
So what I was going to say, Schwartzman is one that I think you can't quite count out just yet. He's a guy that definitely, he still has his eyes on the F1 prize. And he is with the WEC hypercar team and doing a pretty good job, very good job. But he's still young enough. He's still got recent F2 experience and could be in the mix as well. So that would even add to the problems that they've got in that situation.
Right, difficult problem to have. You're okay if you're Ferrari, but it's a law for any other team. They can look at those potential drivers and think that they could nab them.
Well, look at Joe went from the Renault Alpine Academy and joined Sauber.
Look at
Piastri went from the Renault Alpine program, joined McLaren. It happens time and time again.
Right. We'll just go through the order because we've done our top three and spoken about Behrman. So in fourth place, it was Oscar Piastri, Alonso, Russell. Then Norris finished in eighth behind Behrman. Hamilton, Hulkenberg finished the points-paying positions. Then it was Albon, Magnussen, Ocon, Tsunoda, Sargent, Ricciardo and Bottas and Zhou. Stroll obviously crashed. We didn't even see Pierre Gasly properly because he had a big gearbox issue going up to the grid and only competed, I think, one lap and then came back in. Lance Stroll, we spoke a little bit about him. Disastrous day for him because that crash was costly for both him and Alonso, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And to be quite frank, I think Stroll, they need to have somebody else in that second seat because
we're talking about Behrman and how great he is, and then you're talking about Stroll and how he's underperforming for the team. Another year of that, but he's not going anywhere.
No, he probably won't because of who owns the team.
His dad.
His dad. But Aston Martin, at some stage, and I said this last year as well, you're going to have to take a look and go, you've got Alonso in one car getting the absolute maximum, even with a car that is not to Alonso's liking right now. He's still getting the maximum. Where did he end up in the race? He finished fifth in the end, 10 points bagged. Lance Stroll in the wall, the only driver in that entire race to clip the wall through driver error. He's costing that team points. He's costing them positions in the Constructors' Championship. And ultimately, that is losing them money. And that is not... If any other driver would have been long gone by now.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough one because he, like you say, that the rather obvious link with the team owner makes things complicated, but he has been inconsistent. You know, occasionally he can be up there around Alonso's pace, and quite recently he was sort of challenging him at times in Bahrain, but you know he was struggling from lap one and then immediately under that pressure really of the DRS train that was forming behind him, clipped the wall and straight away the race is over, and it's just not good enough. You are right, Harry.
Stroll, I just want to say Stroll's not a bad driver. You don't get podiums in Formula One and you don't show outright one lap pace for being a bad driver. But when you're talking about the Behrmans and your Antonellis and your young drivers, your Schwartzmans even, who aren't getting the opportunity, you've got to go, come on, Lance, this is you've had your chance. Time's up.
I like to look at it almost from the other way around, and really you can see how phenomenal Fernando is here. Obviously on the track last year he was able to physically cross the line, getting a podium despite the later penalties, and he really does excel in tracks like this, especially tracks where it's a kind of a thinking race, so you have to be completely on it. I had the pleasure of working with him back when I was at Ferrari, and you could really see the CPU that man has available to him during a race is truly phenomenal. And especially when you look at now the Aston Martin, with those 10 points you mentioned, they are tying Mercedes in the Constructors' Championship, which is a great feat for a car where they are basically.
A one-car team, yeah, it's brilliant.
A one-car team, yeah, and I think it's interesting to see the strength of that car this weekend in the high-speed corners, and potentially the weakness of that Mercedes at the moment in the high speed, which means they've slipped back a little bit from where they were last week in Bahrain. That's dominated more by the low and the medium speed corners, which is interesting. Going back next week into Melbourne when it goes back a little bit more towards the Bahrain way.
Yeah, let me just ask about Sauber. They had another disappointing day. Is there any light at the end of the tunnel, do you think? I mean, they finished in P17 and 18.
Well, Bottas jumped in for another pit stop, didn't he, to chuck a set of soft tyres on because he was stuck in that gaggle for 12th behind Kevin Magnussen for a lot of it. And Zhou Guanyu was up there in the top 10 because he didn't take that pit stop on the safety car. Sauber holding out hope for some sort of red flag or a strategic option available to them, and they were up against it from the start with the big crash from Zhou in FP3. Brilliant job by Sauber, by the way, to get that car out for qualifying, even if he did just miss the flag by 5 seconds. I think there is light in the tunnel for Sauber because it's so close between the Saubers, the Hasses, the RBs, even the Alpine of Ocon was in the mix as well. So it's not like they're massively off the pace and they're the back marker that's getting lapped twice over rather than just once over. So I do think there's light at the end of the tunnel. I think the big worry for them is their wheel nuts in the pit stops 2 times in a row now. One for Bottas in Bahrain, today for Joe in Saudi Arabia, where they have had some sort of issue, and that has cost them massively in the pit stops.
Yeah, when you have an issue like that, you can be sure that from the first moment that it occurs, it raises alarm bells. It's such a crucial component on the car. And they would have taken, you would hope, pre-measures and precautions ahead of this round to sort of just ensure against it happening again, even if they're just temporary. And the fact that it's happened again is pretty shocking. And it's going to cause serious conversations, I would have thought, to happen back at the base. But it's a very difficult position for them. I think personally their pace was even flattered a little bit today by the fact that Magnussen was playing the moving road chicane for his teammate and doing an excellent job of it. He was using the first sector to back everyone up where they couldn't overtake him, really lift off in those high-speed corners. And even then, Bottas was struggling to join the fight. So I do think that they're well off the pace at the moment. We'll see if other tracks suit them a little bit more and what their development can be like.
Talking about other tracks, we do head to Australia in 2 weeks' time. Daniel Ricciardo, home race. He'll be hoping for a better result than this one, where he finished in P16. The RB's not going well. Who's going to be able to shine in Australia? Ruth, just tell us how different that track is and who might have a chance.
Well, again, statistically, Daniel doesn't have the greatest record around Melbourne on paper. I think he's even kind of commented on that before about his own curse when he goes back to his home race. I think, again, it's going to be a Max Verstappen show. So it's...
Ruth, we brought you here for a reason.
The battle for 12th will be one to tune in for.
The battle for P3 will be hot once again. So I think that the kind of pecking order is unlikely to be hugely different. If you look at where the cars so far have excelled and where the drivers so far have excelled, as you go further back down the grid, especially in that tight midfield. Well, midfield, I think everybody's midfield except Max nowadays. But for example, Albon is always really fast round Melbourne. He did the kind of the almost race distance on one tyre set to secure points a couple of seasons back. So I think it'll be an interesting one to watch no matter what.
Yeah, I think that midfield battle is going to be great again, because Williams and Albon in particular, they feel like they haven't quite unlocked the potential of that car yet this season so far. It's only been 2 races, but I feel like they were very close to getting a decent result today, but Alex just couldn't quite get past that gaggle, as you say, Harry, in the middle, and had a bit of damage as well. And even with that, finished a strong P11. Sargent as well showed a little bit better today. He was right up there with Albon for the meat of the race and just dropped off a bit towards the end. So, they're looking like they could score points, but they're up against very strong competition with the Haas's, the Alpines potentially. It's a congested area of the grid, isn't it?
Yeah, just looking at the championship standings as they stand after 2 races, Max Verstappen obviously leads the way, 51 points ahead of Sergio Perez on 36 and Charles Leclerc 28 points. In the constructors, it's Red Bull Racing 87 points ahead of Ferrari on 49 and McLaren on 28 points. So there's plenty to play for if you take away Red Bull. But they did an amazing job, despite everything that's going on off track, which will continue to rumble on, I'm sure, all the way through till maybe the end of the season, but definitely Australia. They are doing their talking on the track, Harry.
Absolutely. And Max Verstappen is a generational talent. The design team of that RB20 do not rest on their laurels, as was clear when we came into the start of this season. You have to hand it to them. As I said earlier, sport, no matter what it is designed to reward those who achieve the most and who are better than the rest. And that is exactly what Max Verstappen and Red Bull are doing right now.
Absolutely. Even to the point that it feels like he's starting to make a little bit of a mockery of it. Did you guys know that he was up at 3:30 a.m. morning of the Grand Prix on Twitch, streaming on iRacing, a simulator racing platform. He didn't have enough of the track action on Thursday and Friday, that he was up in the middle of the night on the sim rig.
You're calling Verstappen out, Aitken.
Well, I just couldn't
Were
believe
you
it.
up watching the Twitch stream?
No, I just woke up to it this morning. I was thinking he doesn't even need sleep, this guy, to dominate the race. It's incredible.
Well, I've got one for you on that. Actually, that's part of a jet lag strategy. So if you have to offset the race time. So the race time is 8 p.m. local. So normally your race is at 3 p.m. So you have to take 5 hours off of that to turn it into normal time. So actually, that's only like being on iRacing, kind of, 10 p.m.
All right, so actually he was just being very...
That told you, didn't it, Jack?
Yeah, but I just couldn't believe it. I was like, this guy is up at 3
But the fact it's a racing simulation as well, he just cannot get enough. He is all about the racing at the end of the day, and that's what stands him out from the rest.
As is Ruth. Obviously, she's put us all in our place. Thank you so much for joining us. It's really been an absolute pleasure. Dak, you've been great too. Harry, along for the ride.
See you next time.
Yep. We don't do driver of the day anymore, do we? Or do we? Can we?
Well, Bearman,
Producer
surely.
Joe says yes.
Bearman.
Yeah, all right.
Oh, but Jack's not a Bearman fan. So.
I am a Bearman fan.
Because he's not from Essex.
I'm getting ganged up on here. This isn't fair.
Sorry. You can take it out with the bosses in the end.
Are you Bearman as well, Jenny?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, okay. Just checking.
Who else
Just checking,
could you
just checking.
support? I can't see anyone else that's driving the day. He did a great job. And he's a young Brit, who's leading the way for the next generation. So great stuff. Thank you so much for joining us. This has been an IMG production for BBC Radio 5 Live.